and he is up and running and ready to go, joining us via Zoom, and is going to be in town May 5th at the AMC Neshaminy Theater. It is the 25th anniversary of Dogma.
I've seen that.
And they're calling it the Resurrection Tour. It's one of my favorite films by our guest. Ladies and gentlemen, we like to consider him a friend. Yeah. Mr. Kevin Smith is joining us today.
Kids,
Morning.
how are you? I'm on the Zoom and I waved as if radio was going to hear that.
Well, we are also on YouTube, so you'll be seen as well. So there you go.
So they will see the wave.
They will see the wave. Yes. Yeah.
Kevin,
how was everything? I'm so delighted you actually said the movie theater name. What was it? Neshaminy? I've been trying to pronounce it.
Neshaminy. Yeah, the AMC Neshaminy. We were actually talking about you earlier this morning, Kevin, because we were doing a segment where we were taking a historical look at some stuff down the shore, and we started to dive into the invention of the Skee-Ball game, and it was a guy in Vineland, New Jersey that created it, and the first one ever was in Atlantic City. And then we started to connect the dots of how many times you have put Skee-Ball into your films, and Dogma is one of those because God is a huge fan of Skee-Ball, apparently.
Aren't we all?
Yes.
A maker's likeness. Of course, we all love Skee-Ball. New Jersey, of course, the site of many important inventions that we all use all the time. But Skee-Ball, I think, is probably the number one. And we featured it in both Chasing Amy when they go on a date to the Keensburg Boardwalk, and then more prominently as a plot device in the aforementioned Dogma. But that was because I grew up on the shore, and that was my that's how I passed the time. Go to Long Branch, go to Asbury Park, go to Great Adventure, or as they called it, Six Flags later, and play a lot of Skee-Ball. And just recently, I was down in Orlando visiting my mom. She lives near Orlando and whatnot. She's 79 and stuff, and she don't get around as much anymore. So I said, Mom, get in the car. We're going to go to arcade. And we went to this place called Deezerland, which is a big arcade and a car museum. And we played Skee-Ball. And she stood up. I'm pushing her in a chair and stuff, but she was able to kind of stand up and roll balls and then talk about my father. Like, your dad took me on a Skee-Ball date. Like, they used to bowl together, but then they would go play Skee-Ball later on and stuff. And it was so touching. And then quietly, and she goes, and that's why I started having sex with him.
Wow, it is an aphrodisiac as well, apparently.
Yeah, the latter half of Skee-Ball was the most important part of it to my father.
Oh my God.
Skee-Ball was just foreplay.
Yes. You can't look at those holes and not get turned on eventually, I guess.
God. You're not kidding, man. You got to remember, this is the 60s, kids. So, just even the visual of something going into something else.
I love that. Dogma, we're all huge fans, and we've talked about this before. And I think over the years, and we talked about this a little bit when you came out, and thank you, by the way, for coming out to the Camp Out for Hunger. It was so amazing. But
God, it was nice. I still have, you guys gave me a Dunkin' Donuts hat because Dunkin' was a big sponsor. And then, shortly thereafter, I was in a Dunkin' Donuts commercial with Affleck over the.
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
I wore my hat, and the people at Dunkin' were there, and they were like, "Where'd you get that?" And I was like, "MMR, man."
Yeah.
Love it. Before Christmas, they were just giving them away.
Love it.
Well, it occurs, and I've noticed this when the movie came out. Obviously, very controversial. Don't quite know why, because it is, and we talked about this. In many ways, it can reaffirm aspects of faith.
Crazy reverent film. For a movie that has anal jokes in it, a very reverent film.
Yeah, but I forgot, and this cracked me up, the footage on the local news of you going down to one of the protests and talking about how the movie was evil, and and you never identified yourself. That's one of that is pre-trolling, before trolling, right?
It was good times, man. We were sitting around, they were opening up the movie in our neck of the woods. It was when it was going wide and stuff. And, I'd seen religious protests to the movie when we debuted at the New York Film Festival, got out of the car and had the kid, Harley, when she was just a baby. And we had these little angel wings on her. We got out of the car, there was 1,000 people protesting lined up in front of Alice Tully Hall, holding a giant Mary statue, all praying the rosary at me, weaponizing the rosary at me. So we go inside, and I'm going to go up on stage and introduce the movie with the kid because I'm like, like the best way to win the sympathy of the audience, like I have a child now. So, she's dressed like a little angel. Makes sense. Before I go up, Gina Gardini, she was the publicist at Miramax at the time. Wonderful woman. She goes, she hears that I'm going to go up with the kid. And she goes, Kevin, I just want to remind you that anybody could buy a ticket for this movie tonight. I was like, yeah, that's why it's sold out. It's awesome. And she goes, no, anyone can buy a ticket for this movie tonight, especially people that don't like the idea of this movie at all.
Right.
I was like, and I don't get it. And she's like, you're about to walk on stage with your kid. And I felt it'd be remiss if I didn't remind you that this movie has angered a bunch of people. And I got like kind of scared because I was like, oh my God, are you saying I shouldn't bring the kid out there? She's like, I'm just feeling like I should say something before you do this. And then there was a moment of like, do I let the terrorists win? So instead, I went out on stage with the kid, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't holding her like a human shield the whole time, like waiting for that bullet or whatever.
Like Martin Sheen
in the dead zone.
Yes, very much. Just like in the dead zone. Excellent poll. Oh my God, nobody references the dead zone enough anymore. So when the movie opened in our area, it was playing at the Sony Multiplex in Eatontown, which is like, I was living in Oceanport, New Jersey. So it was like literally a 5-minute ride. It was me and Brian Johnson, my friend Brian Johnson, Comic Book Man, and Jennifer, my wife. So we read in the paper that there was going to be, 5,000 people showing up to protest. And I was like, 5,000 people, that is our entire neck of the woods. That would mean even my mom would be there. So I was like, we got to go.
Right.
So we went incognito. We got some cardboard. We made some signs. One said to hell with Dogma, and the other said Dogma is dog S. And we put sparklies and glue on it, man. It was like a true art project. And then we went to the joined the protest. Not 5,000 people, about 15.
Yeah.
I didn't recognize any of them, but they did have a crucifix there. So Brian Johnson didn't know the rosary or anything, but I did. So we joined the line and we just started protesting. And that's when the news van pulled up. And I saw the news van, like the lady get out, and then the guy with the camera, and they're looking at our assembly going like, same reaction I had. There's nobody here. Where's the 5,000? This is nothing, but they're already there. So like, we might as well shoot it. So she's looking at her clipboard, the lady, and then she looks at us, and I guess she's trying to figure out who she's going to interview, and their eyes fall on mine. And then she looks away to the next person. Then she looks back at me. Then she looks at the clipboard, and then she looks back at me again. And she darts right to me, like races right up to me. And she's like, are you him? And I pointed to the crucifix. I was like, no, that's him. Oh. And she goes, are you the director? I said, no. She goes, can we interview you? I said, yeah. And then they interviewed me about the movie. And, I didn't give my name until like I was saying, like, this movie's bad. And I've heard it's bad. And I don't like what it stands for. I haven't seen it yet. So that's why we're here praying and stuff. And she'd asked me, she's like, what's your name? And I said, Brian Johnson. And Brian was standing right next to me. My mom that night called up. She's like, Tiger, there's a boy on the news, looks just like you. And has your friend's name. Doesn't like your movie. I was like, Mom, that was me.
You turn in a great performance, though. You are, one could easily take you for that. But in the years that have passed since then, I think it has been copied in many ways. And I think, listen, again, there's a case to be made for the spirituality of the film. And I see it pop up in things like Supernatural and iterations of Constantine, and just that sort of thing. Or Lucifer, the series that was on for a while, doing similar polls. So a little bit ahead of its time, would you say?
I don't know. I think we're all pulling from the same source material.
Yeah.
Right? There's a book that's been sitting around forever that periodically people go, oh my, this has some dramatic tension in it, and find elements to pull.
Right.
So, and we've always been, particularly cinematically fascinated with the supernatural or the things we don't know. I mean, that's the perfect milieu to deal with material like that, because we don't see angels in real life, or at least more evidently. Like, we don't see people walking around with wings. We know there are angels everywhere, heroic people that do wonderful things all the time. But we don't see angels as traditionally depicted in the Bible, or demons, or forces of good versus forces of evil. That's like the root of every movie story right there. And so in terms of forces of good and forces of evil, there's a marketable approaches to the material, like the rebellion and the empire, the First Order and the resistance. And, then there's the very traditional, going way back to people telling stories around a fireplace, stories of angels and demons fighting, all. So I, for me as a kid who was raised in the Catholic faith, and was an altar boy who sat on the altar and giggled every time the priest was like, "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." Dogma is a meditation, like a grade school meditation, if you will, made by somebody in their 20s, because he'd been thinking about that stuff since grade school. I saw some, most people seem to like the movie, but there were definitely some criticisms that were like, this is like, what happens when kids are stoned in a college dorm and sitting around talking about faith or whatnot. And I couldn't argue that too hard. I wasn't a stoner in those days, but like it was born in my youth when I would sit there in Catholic school or sit there on the altar serving mass going like, some of this stuff doesn't really make sense. You got to remember, like, while I was making Dogma, I still believed in all the tenets of my faith. It was George Carlin that really started to like put a crack in my shield, my Christian shield. We were talking about to do a scene. I was going through a thing. And then, I was talking about like the approach, and George goes, you really believe in all this stuff, don't you? And I said, yeah, you're Catholic, you don't? And he goes, no, I'm smarter than that. And that was like the beginning of the end of my faith too, because he was the smartest person I'd ever met.
So I always, whatever brings you comfort, if you're a good person, you can be a good person. And to me, religion, and for many people, and I was raised Roman Catholic, and certainly there. I'm an open mind to all of it, and what it can do for people and how it can be misused.
Absolutely same. And I'm also the guy too that I have no problem with anybody that is deep in the faith. I got a problem with people that weaponize faith against people they don't want to do things that they don't want them to do.
And Dogma addresses that. Yeah,
exactly.
and that's really
you got true faith, man. I miss mine. It's a beautiful thing.
Hey, Kevin, I wanted to ask you about the filming of the movie, because I remember there was an interview that came out when Rounders hit theaters, and Matt Damon talked about he had not really become a star yet. So he was able to make that movie and not be a Hollywood star. But when Dogma came out, Armageddon was out. Obviously, Good Will Hunting had hit theaters. The guys had won the Oscars for that. What was it like for you filming those two guys really at the beginning of the ascent for Matt Damon and Ben Affleck to superstardom? Was it challenging for you at that point?
A quick pedantic correction: Rounders came out after us.
Okay.
Okay.
But I think it went Good Will Hunting. That on the heels of Good Will Hunting, like while they were still up for the Oscar, we were shooting Dogma at that point. In terms of yes, they were blowing up huge, which was, tremendous. Those are two dudes that I, worked with before, and Affleck, I was absolutely fucking, sorry.
It's okay.
Absolutely adored my whole career.
Yeah.
So working with them wasn't like, oh my God, they're suddenly movie stars now. Like they were totally chill, totally fine. But I remember when we were shooting the scene from the opening of the flick and they're at the airport.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where we put the whole plot in place. When we were done with that, they got on the plane to go back to Los Angeles for the Oscars.
Wow.
And so they had won the Golden Globe. And when they won the Golden Globe, they thanked everybody except me and Scott Mosier were the ones that got the movie over to Miramax to get made. Julie Adams was up for a Golden Globe because she was nominated for Chasing Amy that year. And after Ben's speech, she saw him and she flipped him a quarter and she was like, you got somebody to call right now. And was like, oh my God, man, that is, I cannot believe we forgot you. You're like, this is crazy stupid. I swear to you, if we ever get close to that Oscar, we're going to sing your name from that. I was like, hey man, don't worry about it. It's totally cool. So me and Moj put the boys on the plane to go to Los Angeles from Pittsburgh to for the Oscars, man, while we're still in Pittsburgh shooting Dogma, and they'll be gone for a few days and come back. So we're like, go get them, man. This is amazing and whatnot. And, they win the Oscar. And we are all gathered in Pittsburgh at the hotel room and stuff, the entire cast and crew watching this. And the boys are up there who we had just seen 24 hours prior, jumping around on stage going oh, my God, who are we forgetting? We keep forgetting. And we're all sitting there. Me and Scott are leaning forward. And then they get played off. And they're like, thank you. Good night. The whole room goes quiet. And me and Moj are like, all right, we got to run upstairs real quick, grab a smoke. And we left the room. We're like, twice, bro. Twice. he called us up and he was like, I cannot believe it. So if you ever wonder, like, why does Ben Affleck still do Kevin Smith's movies?
Listen, he went up again and could have mentioned you, he won another Oscar.
Him and I got this book. There was this book we did a few years ago, a coffee table book called Kevin Smith's Secret Stash. Beautiful hardcover book from Inside Editions. But behind my back, they reached out to a bunch of people I worked with to have them write things and stuff. And Ben wrote this, like they asked for, I think it was 400 words. Ben wrote this really beautiful 5,000 word piece that they couldn't fit into the book for the space they allotted. So they printed it separate and stuck it into the book that it pulls out. And in it, he talks about like that whole story and blah, blah, blah. But, in the moment, I remember like my mom and my dad, you were like, why didn't they mention you, Tiger? Like every time I'd see him, be like, Ma, I don't know. Like,
you end up looking like a rube. But talk about
my God. It's like, yeah, you carry that forever and stuff. But it's been, me and Moj weren't like, oh my God, let's get this made because we were like, this would be good for our careers. The script was just wonderful. I remember when he sent us that script, we'd made Chasing Amy. We'd made Mallrats at that point. And not Amy yet. We'd made Mallrats. We were on our way to Chasing Amy. And he was having trouble getting Good Will Hunting made at Castle Rock where it was. And he was like, you're at Miramax. Do you think they would buy this? And I was like, they don't really buy expensive scripts, man. But like you could FedEx me the script and I'll read it. And he FedExed it to me. And I went into the bathroom, sat down on the toilet, started reading and didn't get up for the entire script. I came out after 2 hours. I was crying because it's so emotional. And Scott Mosier was like, that was one hell of a movement. What was happening? I said, I've just read Ben and Matt's script and it's amazing. And so I was just happy to get that stuff made. And honestly, like the only people that remember that they didn't say me and Scott's name is me and my mom. My dad died. So it's just me and my mom.
All right. Well, the cast, Chris Rock, George Carlin, Alan Rickman, the great Alan Rickman. I've always heard, and the rumor's always been that Linda Fiorentino was she's great in the movie, but difficult to work with. Was that your experience, or what was your experience like with her on that set? Because she's really good.
She got the movie made. Like she was the reason that they greenlit the movie. She was coming off of Men in Black, and at the end of Men in Black, it's her and Will Smith standing there. Like she's introduced as the new Man in Black. She was a character throughout the whole movie and stuff. And so it was on the strength of that they greenlit us. Like we were in development on Dogma for like a year. It took us a long time for them to say yes. At first they were like, you can make it for $3 million, which was like way too little for that movie. We eventually got it up to $10 million because the boys won the Oscars. So they were massive stars. And this was the first thing they were doing after that. And because Linda was in Good Will Hunting, they were like, all right, it was in, Men in Black.
Right, yeah.
And because of that, they were like, that's enough. You've got your 3 power stars, go forward. And that was before we had Chris and Salma and George. Alan signed on very early. Alan had went to meet with the execs at Miramax. John Gordon, who was our exec on the movie, he went on to run Universal for a minute. He produced all the David O. Russell movies, including the Silver Linings Playbook. So he said, hey, man, Alan Rickman just came in for a general meeting to talk about this Merchant Ivory movie. And I was like, Hans Gruber? And he was like, okay. And all he wanted to talk about was Chasing Amy. And I was like, I made Chasing Amy. He's like, I know, man. So like, maybe we should send him a Dogma script. And I was like, he would be amazing as Metatron. And we sent it to him. The dude said yes, like right away. Wow. He was so sweet, man. Such a good guy. And he's so wonderful in the movie.
He is. He's terrific.
But looking at Linda's IMDb, she really didn't do much after that and hasn't done anything.
If I remember correctly, she was working on a Georgia O'Keeffe biopic. And I don't know if it ever came to fruition.
Okay.
But yeah, I loved her because, she was in a lot of things I dug, including Gotcha back in the day.
Gotcha. I remember that.
Yeah, it was a good movie.
Like she was in movies that I grew up watching. And The Last Seduction, too. It happened like maybe a year or two before we made Dogma. And that was a massive movie that she should have gotten an Academy Award nomination for. But because it had played on Showtime once prior to its theatrical release, she was blocked from doing so or whatnot. So, I mean, the consolation prize I think she got was Dogma.
Well, also having the movie, having the re-release, having the ability to go do this, but the ownership of the movie, you had to do a lot of wrangling to get it back into your mitts again, right? I mean, it was kind of a Herculean
We tried to get it back because it was owned by Harvey Weinstein personally. They bought it, like we made it under the aegis of Miramax, but then Disney owned Miramax in those days. And so Disney was like, get rid of this movie. It's a polemic. There's too much attention around it. And so Harvey and Bob Weinstein bought the movie themselves. So they personally owned the movie. And so I wrote to a letter to Harvey while he was in jail and sent through his lawyer, a very, heartfelt letter about how this movie was tied up with my faith. And like, you made a lot of movies, but I've only made a few. And this one has a lot to do with my dead father. So since it's not anywhere, you're not doing anything with it, can we buy it back? And we offered $250,000. We got a response back from the lawyer, said no. Then I wrote another letter and we offered $500,000, and the response came back again, no. Then I talked to, I was out of money at that point. So I talked to some people who have a vested interest in Dogma and seeing it go forward. And so then I was able to go back with it. Basically, I reached out to Ben Affleck, and I was able to go back and offer $1 million, and we were still
wow.
So that was that, and I was like, look, I can't do better than that. And so we all walked away. And then a year later, I got a call from the company that owns the movie now. Wonderful people who bought a tranche of films from Harvey like last year or something like that, and they included Kids, that Larry Clark movie, because Fahrenheit 9/11, the Michael Moore movie. That was another movie that they had to buy away from Miramax. There were a few, I think 7 karate films, because they were working with Quentin on releasing karate flicks, and then Dogma. So they called us up and they were like, we bought these movies, it was an investment company, they're not even a studio, man. Wonderful people. They bought the movies, like, we bought these and one of them's got Ben Affleck in it. What is this? And I was like, oh my God, that's my 4th movie Dogma. So they were like, do you know what to do with this? I was like, I know exactly what to do with it. And I got invited in, so I got to play with my material again. I don't own it still, but I now could feel good. We did our due diligence to make sure that like that dude has no connection to it whatsoever, sold it free and clear. So at that point, because for years, they would make offers like, well, you could take the movie out, but he gets a percentage. I was like, I can't be in business with this man.
No.
So it did work out, thanks to the people that bought the flicks, but they bought the flicks for a price that, like, here at the end of the day, I'll say this: the guy who we were trying to buy the movie from literally could have sold it to us at any point, but didn't. And I think that was, I don't know. I don't know why.
It's a dick move. Yeah.
I mean, but the least egregious thing that the guy's ever done.
Right. Good point. To remind people, 25th anniversary of Dogma, the screening is going to be at the AMC Neshaminy on May 5th. Kevin's going to be there for a Q&A. It's a 6 and 7:30 show times. You can go to dogmamovie.com. Last week, Kevin, I literally saw a car that had a Buddy Christ sticker on it. And I know you have got a lot of great collectibles. I'm assuming that somewhere the Buddy Christ statue lives. And I also wanted to ask about the Golden Movie, if you held on to those.
The Golden Movie, we let go of in an auction years ago when we were trying to raise money for something. And I think the idea was like, we're selling the past to pay for the future. Okay. So somebody has the Golden Movie, but the Buddy Christ I held on to, and it's at Jane Silent Bob's Secret Stash in Red Bank. So you go to our comic book store, which is now in its 28th year. The Buddy Christ has his own perch where he's
that's great
at all times and whatnot. People ask all the time, like, how much is that? I'll buy that. And I've always told the people, like, at the store, like, if somebody offers you a cold, hard $1 million cash, take it. Right away.
Yeah,
but that's never happened yet.
It's not happened yet.
But yeah, you can see it there. Believe me, when I'm dead, like I told them, you cremate me and you stuff me inside the Buddy Christ statue, and that'll give people a reason to keep going to the store.
Always making an appearance. I just want to quickly mention last weekend, Tesk was on, and I watched it. It was on. We have been besieged with all these internet channels that are now part of Xfinity. So I'm like, oh, okay. And they're showing stuff that you really don't get to see. And I'd seen it, when it came out and really enjoyed it. But I was reminded how good that movie is. And what an anomaly it is. And your hard directing chops, but also so many elements are great. Like Michael Parks, Johnny Depp, Justin Long in that what had to be nightmarish walrus costume. Any memories from making that movie?
Yeah, never has so much pure, unadulterated talent been deployed in the efforts of making such a ridiculous movie. It's a flick that it was a stoner fever dream that we came up with on the Smodcast podcast. Me and Scott Mosier were talking about this thing we read online, and it escalated into me going like, somebody should make a movie about this. Somebody should make a movie where you show up at this dude's house, he knocks you out, and he puts you in a walrus suit. You be the human walrus and stuff. And then I was like, you can hear me say it on I think it's Smodcast episode 258, The Walrus and the Carpenter. And I was like, where are all the brave filmmakers who would make this man to walrus transition movie? And I remember I used to be a brave filmmaker. And I was like, well, you know what? I could do this. And I put it out on Twitter. I was like, if you listen to Smodcast, you hear us talk about this movie. If you think this is a good idea for me to pursue, hashtag walrus yes. If not, hashtag walrus no. And the next morning, it was just a sea of walrus yes. Yeah. One walrus no that said, I'm really walrus yes, but I'm voting walrus no to support the democratic process. So because the internet told me it was a good idea, I wrote the flick. And I'll be honest with you, when it came out, it was like disastrous. But since then, like it's the movie that dialed my clock back a little bit. Young people love the hell out of that movie, man. Art students and stuff, those are the first people started claiming that movie. I would be at Comic-Cons. And art kids would be like, I love that Tusk. And they were well outside of like the generation that watches our stuff. They were the kids of the people that grew up watching our stuff. So as weird as a movie as it was.
You can't hide what makes NJM Insurance so great. Although some may try. We're proud to put policyholders first. No jingles or mascots, just great insurance. NJM.
Hotels with spas.
Ooh.
Beach resorts with spas.
Oh.
Ski resorts with spas.
Ooh.
To make it in a bizarre way, it put a little light in the fire under my career for a Red Hot.
Well, there are scenes in it that are atypical of your directing style that I really love, and Michael Parks is always great, but
Parks is absolutely spellbinding.
And Johnny Depp. Again, I forgot with the prosthetic and stuff and that character. But there's a scene in particular, and I don't need to go off on this, but when he's in the water, he's being taught how to swim, and you see the skeletons of the failed experiments. That is a hell of a shot.
It is. It took me. Let me see. By the time we made Tesk, I was at least 24, 23 years into my career or something like that, because I'm 31 years into it now. So I think if like after 20 years of doing a thing, you can't come up with an interesting shot. Maybe they're right. Maybe I am a visual idiot.
Well, I enjoyed it.
That was the movie where I actually like that and Red State are two of my favorites because they indicate that like, oh, he could have been a really good filmmaker. He just wasn't really interested in that sort of thing.
I love in the trailer for the movie for the release of Dogma. It had to be. You had to.
Yes, the line.
Yeah, the line. Say the line because it's hilarious.
It is. So it says, the good folks at Bond have cut that trailer. They're a marketing firm out here in Los Angeles, and they cut the trailers for Jay and Silent Bob reboot, Clerks 3, the 4:30 movie, my last three movies, and then we went back to them for this. They also came up with the amazing poster. So the trailer is largely theirs from top to bottom, with a brand new like sell of an old movie. I was absolutely blown away. But they do that thing that like I've tried never to do in my career. I never use that a film by Kevin Smith. I never try to separate myself out because film is a collective art form and everybody makes it, and it wasn't just me. So I never liked that. So as my career has gone on, I have to concede to the fact that my name is a marketable name. So it always becomes an argument at trailer time where people want to include from Kevin Smith. And I was like, please don't do that. Like it reeks of Kevin Smith. You don't have to put my name on it.
Right.
The moment they see Jason Mewes, they know it's a Kevin Smith thing. So they had it in here, and the folks were like, it would be very effective, useful as an old movie. You're tied into it and stuff. So it said from writer-director Kevin Smith. And then the only note I had for him was like, can we add in parentheticals after half of a second of that on screen when he made good movies? And, nobody fought that.
I busted out laughing when I saw that. Yeah.
I mean, it was the one thing. I can take no credit for that trailer. They did a wonderful job cutting it, but I was like, this will go down easier for me if we can add a joke here. And there's one more laugh, and it also, my whole career has been all about like stealing the thunder. You can take the piss out of yourself before somebody else does and stuff. So that it just fit. And I knew people who'd be watching it who don't like my stuff anymore would be like sitting there going, well, this is when he was good. So we might as well write that on the screen. That's great.
All right, I'm going to take a left turn here because I'm going to ask you a question because you seem to know stuff about the industry. There are two movies that there are two movies that I've been trying to purchase digitally. And in fact, I don't even know if you can find the DVDs anymore. And I'm wondering why these are not available, but the sequels are. Okay. I cannot find Cannonball Run or Revenge of the Nerds anywhere to purchase. And I just don't, but you can get Nerds in Paradise and you can get Cannonball Run too. and to me, it makes no sense whatsoever. Why is that?
Nerds is a weird one because that was a Fox film, right? Like that was.
I think it was. Yeah.
Movie. Sometimes what happens is soundtrack issues have in the past delayed releases of movies when they make a film at a time where there's not like the soundtrack deal as it was in the 80s or the 90s or something like that. And so their music was being used next to nothing or free or something. And so sometimes they'll swap out tunes, or if the tunes are too specific to that movie, then they spend a long time negotiating or waiting for the artist to break down so they can finally include it and stuff. So that could be one possible reason.
Kevin, let me jump in here for a second because I think I remember clearly there was a point in time where they did that with Animal House. They took...
I believe, Fast Times at Ridgemont High famously had a couple tracks that they had to swap out.
Right.
Animal House, I don't remember, but it could have been.
Yeah.
Marissa was saying PCU
back
as well.
in the day, music issues would hold things up. I don't know what would be holding up Cannonball Run. It's not like, oh man, that soundtrack. So I don't know what that one would be about, but what a crowd pleaser.
I'm assuming that Coppola, from his script, is probably an issue for the original Cannonball, has to be.
Next, I want to ask you what your thoughts are after watching the trailer for the new Fantastic Four movie.
Fantastic. I mean, well, that's low-hanging fruit to just say fantastic. What it smells like to me, and I don't think I'm like decoding language. And if you know your Marvel history, if you know your MCU, if you see where they're going with things, these characters exist in a pocket universe, a different Earth than quote unquote ours, or the sacred timeline, Earth 616. So as we've just read recently online, I don't think I'm spoiling anything, the directors talked about there are no other superheroes in their world in this movie we're about to see. So it's not like their Spider-Man will be swinging by, or there's their Iron Man. It is literally just a world in which the Fantastic Four exist. And this movie has Galactus in it. It has a Silver Surfer in it, played by Julia Garner. There were two Silver Surfers, and the more famous one, Norrin Radd, is not in this movie. And I think that's because, spoilers, kids, but I think this whole movie ends with their world being destroyed and eaten by Galactus. Again, I don't think that's a hot take. I think most people that know their stories know, but that whole world is doomed. That's why the approach of selling it with all this wonder of the future and like this kind of neo-modernism, set in the 60s and whatnot, is going to be so heartbreaking, because these four heroes are the only heroes of this world. And they have saved this world from villains countless times, which you're going to see in the movie. They're going to show you the Fantastic Four going up against classic Fantastic Four villains to kind of truncate their history. But when Galactus and when the Silver Surfer comes and heralds Galactus, this whole movie ends in tragedy, which I'm here for. This is going to be the Empire Strikes Back of Marvel movies.
If they do that, that will be very. I love the whole retro thing. I love the pocket.
Die.
Yeah,
they're all going to die.
Yeah.
Look at all the marketing. It's kids with hopeful faces and stuff putting on like a Ben Cooper thing mask or something like that. That world is doomed, man. And I think that's juicy storytelling, to say the least.
So, but they were represented in the chairs, the Marvel rollout for the Doom movie.
When they did their 5-hour look at all these empty chairs.
Right. Yeah. So they're incorporated into that as well. Listen, and we said this countless times, just write a good script. Just give us something that's all we ask. That's all we need. Give us something that's good, and we'll be happy.
I think, look, I'm always there for Marvel, even when it's not as good as the others. It's still like imminently watchable and whatnot. But clearly, they've heard all the messaging about like, you guys got to right the ship or something from audience members. I think you're seeing a return to the storytelling of Phase 1. I think they're trying to thread the needle again, and instead of Thanos, it's Dr. Doom, and to hedge their bets, Dr. Doom ain't just Dr. Doom, it's Robert Downey Jr. coming back as Dr. Doom. So I think in order to create the same level of excitement they have enjoyed for the last 2 decades, but particularly at the beginning of the Marvel phases, I think they're going to tell some wicked storytelling like that. I think they're going over everything and dotting their T's or dotting their I's, crossing their T's. And stuff
I'm open. So visually, it's caught me. I'm in on that alone.
Shackman, the director, he did WandaVision, which was the last, other than of course Wolverine, Deadpool, Wolverine. The last big Marvel project that really captured people's imaginations and had everybody talking was WandaVision. So they got the right guy to bring the Fantastic Four, to usher the Fantastic Four into the MCU.
All right. Well, we hope you're right. It sounds very cool. We're excited.
Yep. All right. Well, listen, we got to wrap though, but we're going to send people to see Dogma, Kevin, the 25th anniversary Resurrection Tour. It's going to be the AMC Neshaminy, May 5th, 6:30 show times. There's going to be Q&A, the whole thing. You can go to dogmamovie.com. Get your tickets. Go check this out. It's a great movie, and with Kevin there, it makes it super duper special, dude.
So
always,
if it sells out, because the second theater is about to sell out, and I don't think they're going to add a third show because it's later at night. What is it? The 14th.
May
I'm in
5th.
New Jersey at my own theater. It's Smod Castle Cinemas. 14th and 15th. So if you want to watch it in my own movie theater, you can come there if it's sold out at Neshaminy.
Nice.
Excellent.
And that's not too far of a haul.
Nope.
No, not at all. Like an hour and a half, and you'll be in Kevin Smith Paradise. You can see the Buddy Christ. He's going to be at the theater.
see the future burial place at Kevin
See
Smith.
my future urn.
All right, brother. We love you. Thanks for coming on, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Kids. I'll see you when I'm in the area. I'll roll in if you guys don't mind.
We love it.
Love it. Kevin Smith, everybody. All right, so